expand the conversation here around sports to include the emotional well-being of you, the student athletes. Prioritizing the emotional well-being of student athletes is crucial for overall development and, of course, performance. And one of the most profound ways that Competitive Edge, EQ, works to strengthen the emotional disposition of student athletes is through EQ development programs. Now, Competitive Edge EQ's work is steeped in ensuring the student athletes develop skills which help them essentially navigate things like emotions, especially since emotions are the primary drivers of our behaviors. Now, here's a few statistics we wanted you to consider. Only 36% of people in the world are emotionally intelligent. If you sit with that, it's a shocking statistic, right? And the Sutton Trust study states that helping students improve their self-regulation, so think of things like the ability to manage thoughts and feelings. It's one of the most effective and efficient ways to support students. Now, this is especially so in secondary schools, with the gap between things like impulse control and sensation seeking being widest in early teen years. At D1 schools, 68% of athletic directors in a survey reported seeing an increase in athletes seeking mental health services over the past 3 years. That's according to the NCAA in 2023. We know how important mental health really is for our student athletes. 70% of Black athletes with mental illness are not seeking treatment. It highlights the stigma in the Black community toward mental illness and mental treatment, which we know the link there is so vital, right? It's been shown that exercise, by the way, significantly improves mental health, but yet to high school athletes, anxiety has really increased over the past 10 to 15 years, especially when you couple things in like social media, right? That anxiety that comes with just growing up. And the survey revealed about 91% of high school student athletes experience some level of stress due to their sport, with 58% reporting moderate to extreme stress. So you can imagine how that impacts them on a day-to-day basis. But tonight, our expert panelists will highlight every facet of the athletic journey, from high school to college to becoming a professional athlete. And this evening's conversation is so vital and so important because it's going to explore emotional and mental well-being, exploring sports as an emotional experience, leveling up. So the truth about navigating the next level of play. When the game ends, transitioning from the playing field to a career, and the body is the temple. So why it's so important to serve your body throughout your journey. Again,
it's taking you there.
This is so important, if I may. This will be a good tangent into the next question. When you're talking about that spiral, and also on the topic of emotional and mental well-being, you know, in your experience, I'll open it to the panel here, how do student athletes typically respond to mental health discussions, and what efforts are made to reduce stigma and then encourage open conversations? So how do you get them talking? Any insight that y'all would offer on this?
Before you pose that question, I was going to make a point that's somewhat relevant. So, you know, life is about experience, not just learning from a book. And I think that's the role of everyone on this panel, is we have life experiences that allow us to mentor, guide, inspire, correct, and encourage that level of awareness and openness. Go back to when you were 12 years old, everyone here. Were you comfortable talking about your emotions? Most of us would say there was a time and place where we weren't. We were closed down for some reason or another. So I will start with role models. You look at professional athletes that have come to the forefront and say, I went through this, whether it was last year, 5 years ago, 8 years ago. Maybe they didn't even tell anyone that they went through it. You can take obvious examples. Kevin Love came out with his story, and I think the more and more role models that the kids look up to that are honest, transparent, and encouraging with their personal journey, that allows a child to say, okay, I've arrived, I'm here, I can share this, I trust you, I look up to you, and you've done it as well. But a lot of things in life, you don't know about it until you experience it. So we have to go back to that day when we were uncomfortable because we have yet to experience it. And I think that's a really important point.
So I do think So one of
I'll work you up. You got another chance to keep going. You got another down to play. So keep going. Finish the game.
That was very powerful, I guess. The biggest thing I had in response hearing that too, I had USA teammates, USA basketball, that had similar life stories and the things they've been through. It really makes the supposed adversity of winning and losing, injuries, the stereotypical definition of adversity seem quite trivial, hearing that. And I think the bigger picture here is adversity is a true gift. Whatever you do with that adversity sets your mindset for what you can cope with moving forward. And it's very difficult for a lot of people from a faith standpoint to say, why did God give this to me? I didn't do anything to cause this. I didn't do anything to ask for this, but I was the strong one that was chosen to get through this, to be a testimony to other people. And it takes a tremendous amount of strength, especially if you have siblings that didn't make the same decisions, right? You make your own decisions with your own path. So I really admire that. And I think for kids to experience adversity for the first time, that is the true challenge. Because if you've had it easy, let's say you're starting five from AU basketball all the way to varsity, and then now you're playing at the best D1 school in the United States, and you're the 7th, 8th player on the bench. Is that your first experience of adversity? Keeping it all in perspective, it really isn't. You need to work harder, you need to get stronger, faster, bigger, whatever that job is to get where you need to go. So adversity is really about perspective at the end of the day. And the more we receive of it, I actually give thanks in those moments. And that's a hard mindset shift, but it's essential in order to thrive. And we've all had curveballs in life. Every single one of us on this panel, I'm sure, has some stories. And you think, wow, why was that given to me? Well, you were made for this. You were made to go through that.
And rather than give a story, I'd like to just piggyback on what they're saying. So as an athlete, you have to think about what you're feeding yourself. Josh talks about the fact that he was eating out of the trash can, and that fed him. In his emotional states, in his worst times, he missed a pass, dropped a pass, it didn't matter because he knew that was not the worst. That was something that he fed himself mentally. And as athletes, that's what we have to remember, but not only as athletes, as parents. Because what you allow your kids to take in eventually will come out. And I'm talking about the music they listen to, the things that they watch on the television screen, how much FaceTime they get on these apps, and different things on social media. It all feeds it. Remember, your thoughts become your words. Your words become your actions. Your actions dictate your destiny. So what you want to do is you want to make sure.
Is why it's so important to preserve your body throughout this physical journey of being part of sports. And I wanted to kind of open the panel here for this question, but what are the common emotional stressors that student athletes often face, and how do you help them recognize and then cope with the challenges? And so feel free to chime in.
I'll start. I think one is unrealistic expectations and unrealistic timeframes. So I always talk to student athletes about SMART goals, specific, measurable, attainable, and realistic timeline. And for them to sit down and say, okay, maybe they had an injury. I was very grateful I wasn't injured. In 4 years, I missed one practice at Stanford for a common cold. So I'm very grateful for that. But I had plenty of teammates where they would set their goals, and because of an injury, it was rerouted. The timetable in which they could accomplish that was rerouted. So the biggest stress is when your vision is tarnished because of an unknown entity or a curveball or adversity. And to redefine that timetable, to redefine that goal, I'll go to football as an obvious example. Some injuries are season-ending. Some injuries are career-ending. What is that going to mean for your identity and your purpose? So I think it's really important to revisit the fact of it's okay to have a plan B. It's okay to change the timetable. It's okay to change what that route and path is going to look like. So the biggest stress is a result of not being able to cope with adversity, which goes back to our prior commentary about what is adversity. How do you actually define adversity? I don't think anything is true adversity because there's always going up. You always have to keep running forwards, as you alluded to. And life keeps moving, whether we like it or not. And next morning the sun is rising, and we're going to figure out what's next. And so I always tell athletes, what is your what's next? You have to define that for yourself. But before you even get to that point of having a what's next, you worked on it 2, 5, 6 years ago, however long ago, because you were well prepared mentally for that moment to come. And as much as athletes don't want to think about injury, as much as they don't want to think about rerouting, I put them in that position psychologically. I was an athletic director for a long time, and I said, what if you don't get that scholarship? What is your plan? I know these are tough conversations, and me saying what if doesn't mean that it will happen.
I think a lot of kids with student athletes, I'm not gonna call them kids, a lot of student athletes get caught up in everything outside of themselves. I think social media.
As well as Lou talked about, look at that fuel that's pointing you to your destination. The fuel is going to get you there, but you have to take some steps along the way.
One more quick point. I just want to make one more quick point, and that is you asked about stress. And I think stress is a contrived emotion. I was very grateful to grow up. My mom's a psychologist, so she would always redefine the perception of stress. And if you look at pressure, the word pressure, and you look at the word opportunity, if you can compartmentalize everything into opportunities, you're going to overcome stress. And it's hard to redefine that, but once you have that skill set, that's when you win. I would also piggyback, you mentioned separating yourself with your lifestyle choices. I personally haven't drank alcohol my whole life, no drugs, super clean living. We were joking earlier, I don't even drink coffee. I think caffeine's a drug. I'll do green tea once in a while for super long days, but I think you have to be okay as a student athlete to walk a life that 2 to 5% of the world is walking and to not succumb to peer pressure. I know we didn't talk about peer pressure, but a lot of that actually does define your identity beyond sport. So if you're singular in your thinking and saying, okay, this is my cohort, this is my clique, these are my 5 group of friends who are all starters on the basketball team, well, that's going to limit your social identity and your contributions on a larger scale. So I think it's really important to, number one, walk your particular path, be okay being different, and making choices that will separate yourself based on who you are authentically, and in that you become a complete human being.
I'll jump in and out.